All right, council, we are going to start round 2 of the special council meeting on the 2021 draft budget. And I'll remind everyone, please disclose of any pecuniary interest that you may have at the appropriate time. And I'm going to pass the meeting over to our treasurer, Trevor.
Okay, thank you. In the documents I have, I'm going to go through basically 3 different ones. First one I'm going to start with is the draft budget documents itself. There's a slew of various different graphs in there. And essentially, I don't know if somebody wants me to share my screen, but I can pull that up if possible.
We've got it right here.
Okay. As we can see, reserves per residence continue to grow. In 2014, it was $234. Now it's projected to be $2,500 per resident by the end of 2021, if we keep with the current spend forecast and trajectory going. Debt per resident is going the opposite direction. It's gone from a high of 1107 per resident in 2016 to 875 by the end of 2020. Third-party debt removes all debt paid to ourselves, and on a per resident basis, it's dropped from a high in 2015 of 945 to 717 by the end of 2021. It's comfortable that it's 1/3 roughly now of what the amount of reserves per resident are. Debt servicing costs are, the next slide, please, Amanda. Debt servicing costs have dropped, and they continue to drop to 1.2% of third-party debt, which is very, very reasonable. The township's investment strategy, next slide, please. It allows us to grow funds for our future purposes, and we should adhere to it in the long term, regardless of what happens. Relative to our peers, our tax rate per household are still the lowest in the county. We're just above the county of Lambton, which is the first time, and based on a 300,000 CVA valued residence, we'd be 1322.60 for that house. The same house in the highest would be 2383.07. So it's a metrics that we look at on a regular basis. Next slide, please. The average across the county in just of the townships is in yellow, and we are strongly below that again. Next slide. This is just a reiteration of an old slide whereby we're seeing that the balance of costs continue to slide more towards the local. And now we're responsible for about 70% of the costs, whereas in 1961, we were responsible for 10%. So we're getting a lot for a little bit of money, and we're doing a lot with it. Next slide, please. There again, feds have all the money, province has all the authority, and municipalities have all the problems. So 9% of tax revenue, but we're responsible for 68% of the assets. MPAC have postponed the 2020 assessment updates. There will be CVA increase, and there will be no CVA increase in 2021 unless there's a change to a property. So only if you've made an addition or you've demolished a structure on a property will your CVA change. So the CVA growth that we've been seeing in the last few years, which was significant for us, is not going to happen. Each percentage tax rate increase will generate approximately $25,000 in tax revenue for us. The budget that is provided in detail, that the binders are there and the supporting documents, demonstrates that it is a 3.5% target and it is based upon where we were last year. It's not a recommendation, it's just based upon where we were last year. So essentially, any fluctuation to that, you go down 1%, you take off 25, you go up 1%, you add 25. Growth based on what we have received from MPAC in terms of development growth, residential and commercial growth, will add $31,500 to the tax base for 2021. With the proposed tax increase of 3.5%, we'll have tax growth of $119,000. County and education taxes are for 2021 are known at this time. The only thing that is noted is education tax rates for commercial and industrial classifications have been reduced by roughly 26.9%. That leaves, based on our commercial presence, $140,000 is being left in tax revenue that was collected last year in the pockets of those businesses in order to have a kickstart due to COVID. If we were to look at comparisons to our neighbors, our taxation dollars, based on where we're at, we're going to be roughly 2.6. If we were the second lowest, went to the same rates as, which is Lambton Shores, our tax increase based on the same CVA value properties would be 2.9, almost 3 million. If we went to the median of the county, it would be 4.2 million. And if we went to the highest, which is Oil Springs now, it's 5.6. So we're taxing the least rate, and that's the impact if we changed our tax strategy, that's all. Next slide. 39.3% of all tax dollars collected from property taxes goes to the township, 38.9% goes to the county, and 21.8% goes to education. That's at our split. It's a change last year. The pie ratios for the county and us were exactly offset. Next slide, please. A split, if we went to the median, we'd get 51.6%, and the county and the education portion would go down. Next slide. If we went to the highest, if we went to the Oil Springs ratio, basically almost 60%, 58.8% of all tax dollars they collect, they retain. So that's the difference that we have. Next slide. Essentially, it's the same thing. If those are the numbers, again, the highest one we would add, if we went to the highest one, we'd add an extra $2.8 million in tax revenue if we went to the highest, but at our current tax rate, if we increased it, it would take 9 years with an annual increase of $324,000. So essentially, what we're looking at this year is a budget surplus if we have the tax rate increase. Next slide. These are all our rates for 2019 and our CVA. Next slide, please. This is a collection portion. 51% of all taxes are coming from residential and farm properties, or farm property residential mix. Farmlands are 30.7, and our mix of other multi-residential, commercial, industrial, landfills, pipelines, and forests have remained roughly the same. So the growth is either going to be in farmland or residential in the future unless we attract new businesses. Fortunately, we have had success attracting a few new businesses recently, and it's helped offset that pain. Next page. There's a shift. Again, tax dollars relative to collection. And the tax class growth. Not a heck of a lot. Next slide, please. So except for the commercial class increase and farmland class, all tax classes have remained constant from 2020. In 2017, residential category provided 395,000 more tax revenue than the farmland category. In 2021, even though there has been a shift, we're still at 544. That's grown, but that's due to the residential development more so than tax rate shifts. Commercial industrial categories have been provided a COVID release reduction, and education taxes amounting to 140,000 in tax savings for those classes, which should help stimulate their business again. Next slide. Based on the numbers that we have provided in terms of our draft budget, this is where the spend will be. The high contributors are going to be Public Works at 25%, Parks and Rec at 20%, General Government at 17%, and trying to find the last one. Oh, Protection, OPP costs primarily at 15.4%. And there it is in terms of dollars and tied to the allocation. Next slide. So with a 3.5% tax increase, we will draw $45,000 roughly from reserves in order to cover our operating costs for next year. Debenture principal repayments of 151 will be sourced from alternative funds in 2021. Budgets for wages have increased to reflect the rates as per the collective bargaining agreement and the pay equity recommendations. Last council meeting, there is a report to do a further adjustment for recent pay equity. That is not reflected in the first iteration, but it is on my notes for change in the final budget. Insurance rates are growing rapidly. Last year we had a roughly 7% increase. A lot of our neighbors were facing close to 20. We had a lot of success due to very proactive fleet management that saved us some costs. We have been told to expect a market correction of another 15% this year, so the budget has included 15%. For the first time in 9 years, I believe it is, OMPF has held, and we are still getting the 416 that we got last year, or 413. The big changes now are we've added 40,000 to general government for staffing. We've reduced 25,000 from Department 100 revenue general government. Investment income is going to decline due to the bank rates dropping due to the COVID crisis. Winter controls and parking reflect 5-year history. Surpluses will be allocated to reserve fund to be drawn upon when overages occur in the future. We started that program last year and they broke even, so we didn't add anything, but it was a good start. For 2021, there's a 10% increase to the gravel budget. Half of that will address cost increase that have happened in the last 2 years, and half will, or 5%, will go to increased gravel. With that increased gravel and the budget that we currently have, it aligns to the recommendation from the engineers, Spreets, to fulfill the costs for the gravel road study recommendations. We've added 30,000 to Department 400 Environment for brush collection. That is a discussion we will have further, I imagine. There is a net impact of 8,000 reduction to Department 429 for the laws and aqua fees. Laws has slightly gone up, aqua has slightly gone down because it is, pardon me, laws has gone down, aqua's gone up. Laws has gone down primarily due to a change in our usage relative to the other users. Sewer rates and water rates are recommended to go up 5% for the next 10 years as per the 2019 rate study. It's reflected. Staff still recommend that council revisit the usage profile because higher users are being in our opinion, rewarded for higher use because we have a declining cost structure as they use more water. We are one of the few municipalities in the province that does that. As per the strategic plan, the arena is now fully staffed, and it's reflected by a 63,000 increase in their operating costs. We recommend that council review the overall impact of the BMX park. We expect a further reduction in tile loans as they draw to their natural maturity and end. And we have removed 25,500 from the development budget, and it's primarily due to when the spot, we have no building for it. So we put it on hiatus for a year to revisit it. And by doing that and incorporating the other changes, it's allowed us to present a relatively flat budget relative to last year. Our main changes that we know are identified based on specific notes, as you will see in the blue sheets of your budget binder, but we have made our best efforts to hold as best we could. Next slide, please. Usual risks, capital overruns on projects. We do our best to work with sources to get most current pricing. However, we still anticipate a 5% CPI growth or cost of inflation growth for construction projects. We have to make a decision on finance and construction and new hall contingent to the success of grants that could happen in the future, or if there is going to be a decision to go forward with the hall immediately. There's little or no contingency in any department operating budget. Any emergency situation will create an operating deficit in that department. Fortunately, senior management are willing to work together and reallocate surpluses to address any shortfalls, and it's been that way in my 4 years, and I'm very glad that they have that open relationship where they can talk to one another. So if we remove the debenture principal repayments, which are coming from another source, we roughly will have then a $107,000 surplus. That surplus will go to general operating reserves. Another further concern, even though we're working on it, is OMPF erosion. The Ford government announced a review of the program principles that was served as good this year in terms of held flat. We don't know the direction. And we don't know the future of gas tax and OCIF fund application funding. OCIF have two proponents. They have a formula fund, which we still get, and it has grown in recent years, but there used to be a top-up fund. The top-up fund, even though it hasn't formally been canceled, it has gone silent for the last few years. Next slide, please. Opportunities. Waste management. We projected roughly the same operating return this in 2021 as we were tracking after 9 months in 2020. If they go back to their 2019 rate, which is quite possible, there will be a surplus generated there. Again, part of the OMPF principles, if they do a proper review there and go back to the principles from when the program was set up, we're going to see an appreciation in those dollars. We have new commercial and industrial partners coming to town. We have residential growth, and we also seeing an expansion and diversification of our tax base across all. That is the operating budget. Any questions?
Wayne, or sorry, Councillor Morris. You're muted.
Trevor, you mentioned $107,000 surplus if everything went good in this budget. Why
Yes.
do we need to take $44,000 out of reserves then?
That's if we don't allocate the funding for principal, debenture principal from other sources, which is what we've done in the past.
Councillor Westgate.
Trevor, you show that much money, the 47,000 coming out of reserves, but we're putting a lot more than that back in reserves, right?
We're putting money into reserves based on an investment strategy. And that money will continue to go.
Yeah, but it's more than the 47,000, right?
Yes,
And we have no way to change the tax rates, do we? Like farms compared to residential?
no,
And who sets them?
Province.
it's set provincially.
Okay.
Any other questions? Trevor, I was wondering about the water. Why, do you know why we charge less for users that use more water? Like where that started and when are we going to look at that? If we're one of the
We
municipalities?
did the rate study in 2019. It was a strong recommendation from the consultants to take a look at it. When they did the previous rate study 10 years prior, I asked the question, was it abnormal then? And they said at that point in time, most municipalities were offering a discount for higher use to attract business. However, there has been a change because as much as we think it is a never-ending resource, there are resource limits on it, and we are seeing higher costing from our provider based on more usage. So at least if nothing else, we should be flat.
Yeah, I think we should be definitely looking at that. I don't know when we should be doing that, but
Well, I think it's something that is on my burner right now to hopefully work with Andrew and Amanda to get a report to you, hopefully in Q1 of next year, just to show options.
yeah. Councillor White.
That will affect our agricultural users quite a bit.
Yes, it will.
Because they are probably the biggest users, the barns that are out there.
But we do have, like Trevor said, it is not an unlimited commodity
No,
anymore.
I do agree. I do agree.
Councillor Morris?
I think we should have a little bit of a higher use break on the water a little bit, because every other business has that. The more fertilizer I buy, the cheaper I get it per ton. I can understand the principle of it. Maybe we just need to adjust it back a little bit so there's not such a gap.
Okay, any other questions or comments so far? See none, Trevor, if you want to move on to the next portion.
We'll go strictly to the capital now. Thank you, Amanda. Capital budget builds off the 20-year long-range capital forecast and the asset management plan. They are getting more and more linked each and every year, and next year will probably be a better linkage because this year we are finishing all our condition assessment studies on water and underground water and stormwater assets, and then we will link that in and be in compliance with OREG 58817, which is due on July 1st, 2021. We've enhanced it with the facilities conditions reports. We've enhanced it by sitting down with the minimum maintenance standards guidelines for vehicles and providing those. We have been successful in terms of our fleet management of extending the lives of most of our vehicles. Beyond that, we were a little delinquent in replacing the fire trucks, but not that delinquent. Again, 20 years for pumpers and tankers is the recommendation for insurance, and rescue vehicles have no tie into insurance recommendations. Once the capital is approved in the budget process, it gives us greater availability to compete the capital program while securing competitive pricing for work to be completed in a timely manner. I say that every year. This was probably the best year for it, in the fact that a lot of the permitting that our projects had to have was pulled prior to the COVID shutdown, so contractors could continue to work. So I'd like to thank council for the opportunity of getting this moved forward and for us to go forward with it. Next slide, please. The basis of the capital budget is we started with 2 million, then we do CPI increase. So now we're up to 2.08. This is funding that we collect from waste management. It goes into reserves, then a portion of it goes into the capital budget. A portion of it goes and stays in reserves through an investment program that Councillor Westgate was talking about. We also pursue as many external funding avenues as possible. So the receipts that are added to this are the annual gas tax. We have OCIF formula funding, and next year we got COVID-19 funding, infrastructure dollars. It's allocated based on population. We've got $100,000 to work with. Whenever we don't have enough money, there will be a recommendation to draw from reserves for projects. For that case, we have built up adequate reserves to basically fund short-term situations, but not long-term. So based on that, we try to maintain as little third-party debt as possible. As you can see, we've decreased that over time. And the capital budget, again, is built on a pay-as-you-go model, except for one aspect, and that is the hall. If the decision with the hall, we will incur some more debt, and we will get into it later on today, but money is cheap right now relative to how it's been in the past. Next slide, please.
Trevor, sorry to interrupt, but I'm just wondering about the $100,000 COVID-19 resilience fund. Is that the same as the infrastructure funding that we were looking at applying for the hall? Or is that a separate?
I believe it's separate. I believe there is a federal program to come down, and this is provincial. But
And is that a guaranteed, if you spend it, you get it? Or how, or is that merit-based, or how does that work?
My understanding is when it gets announced, it's going to be merit-based.
So it's not guaranteed at this point?
The 100,000 is guaranteed. The 100,000 for COVID resilience is based on population and being a rural community. So we have that.
Thank you. And that is for infrastructure projects?
That's for an infrastructure project.
Okay, thank you.
For 2021, I forgot, I didn't change two titles in here. For 2021, the capital budget is going to be driven off WM hosting fees and augmented from existing reserves when necessary. Based on that, the capital budget we're presenting today is 7.248 million with funding from the following sources. Waste management money, 2.08. OCIF formula, 283,000. Gas tax formula, 117. The COVID resilience fund, 100,000. We're actually adding back 82,000 to reserves because we scrubbed or moved a couple of projects out in the future until long-term plans for certain assets are decided upon. We will get into that later in the new year. And then we also have a to be determined. That is the second half of the funding projected for the hall. We can either basically take on new debt or find other means to raise the money to do it. I have been in conversations with a couple of lending sources. I am just waiting for direction from council, and we will trigger that and work at it so that we have everything possible. Our ICIP CCR grant was submitted last year, was unsuccessful. I know other avenues are being looked at for potential replacement. There is also the ICP CCR Stream 2, which will come down in late 2021 or early 2022, again for shovel-ready projects. Based on this, and it's still based on this to be determined on the decision on the hall later on today, we are introducing no new long-term debt. That could change. Reserves have grown from 8.4, we expect, based on our tracking of this year, even with the COVID and a lot of lost revenue, we will still finish up with reserves of 8.86 available. Based on how we are forecasting 2021, if we go forward with everything we have here without touching a decision on the hall yet, we expect reserves to grow to $9 million. And we expect waste management to have a similar stream in terms of revenue generation as 2020. Next slide, please. Revenue assumptions, same as always, 1.4 metric ton limit capacity. There's not much new there. Next slide. Similar goals as every year. We try to achieve with everything in terms of capital budget, public funded, public safety, co-funded projects where we can find them, which is why we spend a lot of money and a lot of effort in terms of seeking out grants. We complete assessment studies to align the strategic plan to our asset management plan. We have had a renewed focus on roadways and public works infrastructure. However, we do have a lot of flexibility in our budget, and we have demonstrated that in the past, whereby we have had issues come up, and even last year with a fleet vehicle replacement program, we switched assets to purchase based on a change of needs at the time with council's blessing. We will invest another $600,000 in the one investment program. We've migrated to a long-term investment strategy program now that we have $1 million in a midterm investment that can be drawn upon almost immediately. I am continuing to work on prudent investment strategy. We were invited last year. It was supposed to take place, the meetings, in April. However, it got canceled. And I'd still like to live with a recommendation that 25 to 35% of future annual surpluses be invested in long-term investments through the one fund. The more principal you have to grow, the quicker it grows and the stronger we'll be in the long run. Next slide, please, Amanda. And that's our plans. Again, we've incorporated the recommendations from the facility condition assessments that we have right now and the ones that we will be getting. There is going to be a update to the paved road study coming out in late 2020, early 2021. We will incorporate that at that time and then build it into everything. And we will complete all our condition studies and look to engage with Public Service Digest. And I will be making a request for council to give permission for us to engage that right now, because every municipality in the province, excuse me, will be engaging Public Service Digest or one of their competitors to complete their asset management core infrastructure upgrades by July 1st, 2021, or else you are disqualified from receiving grants. So even if we don't do anything today, it is one request that I have is to look at that.
So can you explain that further, Trevor, please? Like,
we have to do another iteration whereby we have to provide level of services and what the recommended plan is for our core infrastructure, which are roads, water and sewer, Yeah, roads, water, and sewer are those assets. And right now we have an inventory of the assets, but we don't have level of services as prescribed by the community and defined costs. So it's working with Public Service Digest to hone out that. We've been fortunate that we've got a grant called Amp It Up 2.0, where we've worked with Watson and Associates to start doing some work on roads. In 20 hours, we have not completed paved roads yet. Then on top of that, we have to do a whole new iteration to incorporate those findings in our 2017 asset management plan and publish that by July 1st. And that was
And that's across the province, every
that's
municipality.
across the province.
Wow. Okay, so
I
do
will,
you need a
I will go
motion?
on a very short limb and say we are further ahead than 90% of the municipalities in the province.
It's huge what they're
Yes.
asking.
Mhm.
And if you don't have that, you're not eligible for any future grants.
You will be disqualified from grants at that point in time if you haven't completed it. We are in a situation whereby we're trying to not only do our core assets, but we also have condition assessment studies completed on all our non-core assets. For the dollar that we have got quoted for this study, we might be able to get in the non-core assets also, and then we will be hitting the goal of the 2023 target also.
Perfect.
Okay. And can we allocate some of the money that we got from the province in 2019 for studies and,
For service modernization,
yeah,
no, but we have been building a reserve
okay.
in the past few years, but the reserves have been to complete the condition studies, and condition studies for water, wastewater, and stormwater have come in a little bit higher than what we first were led to believe they would. But they're complete. They will be complete by the end of this year or Q1 of next year.
So that, council, is the reason why we've been doing all these studies for these many years. Because it comes up and hits you real quick if you have to get it all done by July 1st. So what do you need from council in terms of that, Trevor?
In the general government category, there is $70,000 for asset management work. I would just like to have council's permission to engage a contract with Public Service Digest for that work sooner than later, before we get bumped because they don't have any more space available.
What do you think, council? Councillor White?
I think it's the way we should go. If we can get ahead of the curve on this, it sets us up really well for grant programs, because it does, like as Trevor said, it does not sound like a lot of municipalities out there will be prepared. So yeah, I think we should go for it myself.
So are you making a motion to that?
I'll make a motion to move forward with the to engage PSD. Yeah.
And Councillor Morris?
I think we should move ahead with it too, because I don't think it'll get any cheaper to do these studies.
No.
As the demand becomes more and more, it'll be like the municipal drains, they go up in price. So I think we should, now I don't know, do we need a motion or just pass the budget in there? I'm not sure what Trevor needs. I'll second it if it needs to be done.
Yeah, I just need a motion to go forward. It is going to be included in the budget, but it's going to be a contract. We won't be spending any money,
Okay.
but I just want to have the assurance.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Any other
So-
questions or concerns about that motion? All in favor? That is carried. Are you clear on that, Amanda? You look like you've got.
I just want to confirm, thank you, Mayor Wembetz. Councillor Morris, were you seconding that motion?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay. And next slide, Amanda. Okay. A couple of other notes that I have on the capital budget. There's a breakdown in terms of where everything sits. We had a failure of the salt shed recently. We don't have the salt shed in the budget for next year. We did have repairs scheduled for next year. Our repairs this year of what we figured we were going to repair next year finished up being double of what we had in the budget for next year. So essentially we've prepaid the budget for next year. The balance will come out of reserves. However, in the work, we were informed by the contractor, you're like looking at maybe 3 to 5 more years of life on the salt shed. So just to bring that up.
That's if we're lucky, is that correct?
Pardon me?
That with the repairs that are being done now?
Yeah.
What's the estimated cost of a replacement? Approximately.
$820,000.
Okay.
And that was 2019 dollars. So probably 6% above that. And the other thing that is absent from the capital budget as presented today, but is something we should do, it does not include finishing for the new township office or projects forecasted in the future for the 20-year capital plan. We don't have an idea of what it is. We know it's coming. We don't know if the work will be completed next year, but once the shell is ready and we've been told that it's ready, we will have to come up with a number for that. And we're still working on it. And rather than put out a WAG in terms of just a placeholder, I thought it would be more prudent to just disclose it at this time because it would be an absolute wild guess. But we do have reserves to address it.
Okay, so we have reserves. So what you've just said is we're probably looking at 2.5 million out there, like $1 million for your salt shed and maybe another $1 million for, or $500,000, I guess. Maybe I'm high on that.
I think you're high at $500,000.
Okay, for the,
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe 1.3 that could pop up.
Yeah.
Over the next year. Okay.
And Andrew's probably going to cringe when I say this. I think we'll get through 2021 with the salt shed as is, but we have got it bumped out in the 20-year forecast, I believe, for 3 years out. I think that could be a little ambitious.
Okay, so you're saying 2022 we have to build. Is that what you're saying?
I'm looking to add it back into 2022 now. 2 weeks ago, I wasn't.
Okay.
Councillor Westgate?
If we build a new salt shed, are you gonna move it? Do you need more bays on there to keep our equipment in, Andrew? And how many more bays do you need?
Yeah, great question. We definitely need more storage space for our equipment. I wouldn't want to give an exact number, but we'd be looking, I think we've had a rendition of at least 2 additional bays on that existing facility. To say right now, is that going to service 100%? I think it depends on, there's a few moving parts with the potential arena additions and that kind of thing, but that I guess that's a discussion that we would need to have. What's going to completely satisfy our use?
What I'm thinking is we should put a new salt shed in for next summer, so we have something ready to go for next winter at this time. And I think we should move it so we can build onto the existing garage with 2 more bays at least.
I think we are probably 6 months away from having the engineer's report to tell us where to put it to. That's my problem.
Well, what I'm saying is 6 months from now, we could start building it for next year. But it should be in the budget for next year.
I can add it.
Okay.
Amanda, would you like to comment on that?
Just, oh, my power just went out. Good thing we're on a laptop. live streaming. That's great. Yes, I did want to comment on that. Thank you, Mayor Rumbas. Just a reminder to Council and Councillor Westgate, we do have the service delivery review with, I know, the well-discussed recommendations about the use of, am I frozen?
Yes, you are.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
we
we-
hear you.
I hear you though,
So you
Amanda.
can hear me. Okay, great. Oh, no. You can still hear me?
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay. The service delivery review has recommendations regarding the use of the Public Works Garage and future expansion. I know we discussed them a lot. As you recall, the recommendations brought moving that facility to another location. I know it was a bit contentious, but staff is working on a longer term plan presentation for council that will look at all of the needs of Public Works and Parks and Recreation in the future, not just the salt shed. While I understand this has elevated its importance, there are many other considerations besides just the salt shed. So I want to issue that reminder.
Mhm.
Councillor White.
Just along with that too, I had a question. I did see there was some money going to the Watford garage. Is that possibly in this budget, like roofing repairs and different things? Is that something that we should be doing if the arena comes along? Like, I know, is it a requirement, or are we going to get rid of that site with the addition to the arena, or the renovations to the arena, I guess?
That's a good question.
I believe it's all part and parcel of the same report and decision that's gonna have to be made on the existing assets and planning for the future. The only projects that we've put in there are projects that are gonna make sure that the life of the building doesn't end tomorrow. And the roof, and I believe it's a door replacement that are in the budget for the Watford garage, are those two projects. If anything that's gonna be a long-term situation, we have tried to push back as best as possible, i.e. the salt shed. I believe there's a wash bay that was talked about a couple of years ago, but pushed back for the same reason.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Mhm.
Councillor Morris.
Adding $1.3 million on for a salt shed and other things that you mentioned, is that not good? And if we went ahead with the hall, is that not making our reserves awful tight?
It would drop your reserves by down to about 7.7.
I don't know.
That's without the hall.
I'd rather leave the salt shed to next year, but that's just my opinion.
Councillor White.
But we could borrow money too, right?
Your borrowing capacity based on everything and your 2020 borrowing capacity limits,
Mhm.
you should be able to get it comfortably.
Okay.
And
So,
money's
so we may not even touch reserves at all.
You-
It may be.
Yeah.
Like, just given and then finance that over time, because it's
you finance it over time.
not a huge cost on that to do that right now.
Andrew, you've already started repairs of that salt shed, have you not?
Yeah, that's correct. We had to pull all the sand and salt out of the shed because of safety. It was a health and safety. So the roof trusses are in really bad shape, and of course the wall being buckled. We needed to get some structural repairs. So yeah, we had to pull everything out of it to have it looked at. So yeah, and the repairs aren't major, and not expensive, not terribly expensive, but just the use of the building. It just, with the wear and tear, it's not, and that was coming from the analysis that the contractor gave us. He warned, he said, there's not a lot of life left in that building.
But are you confident it will last for another year? Like another?
Yeah, it'll last another, I think it'll last another year, another 2 years.
Like we would be all right if we started building summer of 2022?
I think we'd be okay. I mean, again, there's a risk, but I mean, it's lasted this long. We're making repairs. I think it would hold up. It's just, you know, operationally, there is a challenge. You know, the roof truss are pretty low for the equipment we have. There's not a ton of storage, but it's something I think we could do.
Do we have a contingency plan if the piece fell? If we couldn't use it?
No, I think we'd be looking to get it covered pretty quick.
Councillor Morris.
I think we need to decide where the work shed or department is going to be on a next 20-year plan before we can decide on $1 million addition onto the salt shed right now. I think we need to come up with a plan on what we really want to do.
Yeah, because it is there.
I know the consultant wants to move the shed, but I think we'd be spending a whole lot more money moving everything. First of all, there we have an office out there already. And I think the town maintenance people do need an office out there. Rick does. Maybe Andrew will be out there part-time. All we have to do is add a good wash bay and another bay to it. I know the consultant says move it, but we've already spent a lot of money out there. And I don't think it's worthwhile. I don't think it's needed. And we have a lot of room out there. We're gonna have to clean up a mess. It's salt, oil and stuff. It will be a brownfield.
Councillor White.
Depending on, just a question on the salt shed, is there a portable solution that could be moved if you did decide, like, I don't know if they'd like a coverall or like a temporary covering solution that could be used for another site?
Some are going with a dome on a concrete wall covered with canvas.
Yeah, that idea.
Andrew?
In speaking with our consultant, there isn't a lot of cost difference between a steel clad building and those coveralls.
Okay.
Okay.
But the portability, a steel clad building is there, right? And if you do get rid of the site, all that value stays there, does it not?
Yeah, you wouldn't be moving a steel clad building.
No. Okay.
Councillor Morris.
On what I said before, I totally agree with Councillor Westgate. I don't see moving that building in the next 10 years at least. So, like, I think if council doesn't have a majority of a support of a new building, then we can kind of make the decision on where a new salt shed should go.
Amanda, you are muted.
Thank you. I would request of council to a little bit of patience on this, because I do think that there is some wider factors, and of course council can make any decision it wants on all of our facilities and facility needs. But I just really think it's important that staff have the time to give you all the information so that you have all the pieces of the pie when you make this determination, because there are other things that we haven't talked about today that fit together. And I just want to make sure that all council has all of the information they need in front of them to make a determination together. And it may be, as you've outlined, Councillor Morris, but then we've identified all the other pieces that have to be addressed, and we can make a plan based on whatever council's direction is at that time. So I would just ask for some patience. So we are planning that report in Q1 of 2021.
Trevor.
Yeah, my goal was just to get people thinking about it. I apologize, Amanda. I didn't expect we'd go off on this topic, but it's nice to have the conversation. It gives us a little bit more clarity.
Just so council knows, staff, what is your intention? Were you looking to pass a budget today, or what were your thoughts? Like, was the plan to, because we know we want to get in before January so that we can get out to tender, but are we going to schedule another budget meeting to finalize this? Trevor?
We have another budget meeting scheduled for January, I believe the 20th, if I'm correct, Amanda. And that's when it's to be passed. My biggest ask is council takes a look and makes a recommendation on a tax rate, because I've just gone with the same tax rate increases last year. However, I want council to be comfortable with whatever rate goes forward. And if there's any other projects that you believe that we've missed, I will be coming with my changes and iterations prepared for the 20th. But our goal as a senior management team or senior leadership team is to come in relatively flat to where we are right now. And it'll reflect all the decisions that are going to be discussed between now and that time.
So just to clarify, we are looking at what increase, Trevor?
Right now, it's built with 3.5%. However, you do have the option of whatever you feel like.
Councillor White.
I know our goal in the past has been to continue to move closer to the average of taxes over time, and my feeling is that we should continue that movement. You know, I think 3.5 is reasonable. It would be nice to see it. You know, it is nice that we are just slightly above the county now. We collect, and it would be nice to broaden that a little bit. So,
just to clarify, 3.5% is $85,500.
87.5. Yeah.
87.5.
Just food for thought. I am part of a treasurer's chat group. The consensus across provinces, everyone's trying to stay relatively flat due to COVID. However, with union contracts and with levy increases, most are coming in 1.5 to 2%.
Councillor Westgate.
I think we've kept taxes low in the last while. I believe it has done the community well. I believe we wouldn't have had so many houses being built if we were up even medium, because people aren't coming to Watford to build if they're going to pay the same amount of taxes as they are in Wyoming or Strathroy, Petrolia.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to keep them low, and we have the opportunity to keep them low. I'm not saying 0%, but I see other places coming out with 2 or 2.5%. They are trying to keep them low, and I think that's where we should be.
Councillor Morris.
The 3.5%, if everybody else went 2.5, that would satisfy Todd's thought of us getting closer to the median. But I agree with Jerry. They're moving to Watford because low taxes are our best draw, and I think we need to keep with that. But whether 3.5% or 2.5%, we're talking $26,000 like total. Like, it's not a huge amount, so I'm happy with either one. But I do agree with Jerry.
My thinking right now is a lot of people with the building of the new hall, they're saying, oh, our taxes are going to go way up. Our taxes are going to go way up. And it would be able to say, you know, we didn't really raise taxes, more like we only raised them 2% this year. If you could say, which is like the same as the county, we're still the lowest in the county. I mean, it's $25,000, $30,000. I don't know. It's up to council, but
If we did go ahead with,
Councillor Westgate this year.
if we did go ahead with the hall and all of a sudden Waste Management closed down, if we took our taxes up the median, we would get enough money to make our payments, right?
Yes,
Another $1 million a year.
yes.
So the worst I can see,
Scenario.
that's without spending on other things that we're looking at. We've only got so much money. If you,
However, to raise that $1 million is a 40% tax increase.
yes,
Which will not go over well.
Just so you know.
not really a 40%. We're getting a bigger percentage of the pie when we charge more.
Well, and we are going to see CVA go up as well. I mean, they've
Yeah.
put a moratorium on that, but it will happen.
And
Councillor-
I can't see us losing that stream right away.
No.
Oh.
Councillor White?
I just, what is the real dollar implications on 100,000 of your 3.5% to the average taxpayer residential? Trev?
Oh, of course I have that. It's going to take me some time to find it. I believe it's $15.
I think it was 25, wasn't it?
25 for 300, isn't it?
Oh,
That could
25.
be.
For a
So
$300,000 home.
Yeah,
It's 25. So divide that. $9.
25 bucks. Okay. $9 per 100,000.
I agree, it's not a lot.
No.
I just like to see us cover operating costs with taxation and government.
We are doing now.
I don't know, are we?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just think perception wise this year, it would be nice to be like, we're not raising a lot. I don't know.
I'm of two minds as a treasurer and knowing where we sit tax wise. I'd always have my foot on the gas looking for more money because I could do more with more money. But at the same time, the plight of the world this year, I'm a lot more sympathetic than I'd ever be before.
Councillor White?
I feel we should stay, I still think we should move some, but I would be fine moving within the limits that others have already set for themselves, be it 2.5% or whatever.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking, 2.5.
2.5 is good.
Yeah, just like I think we have to keep somewhat of an upward trajectory because I don't think it helps us. It helps us in some ways to be lowest, but also is a detriment to be the lowest taxes in an area as well.
And also we have growth in other ways too. Like we have at least 20 new homes in the township.
For sure. Yep.
And hopefully 19 more to come with the new subdivision.
Yep.
If we build it, they will come. I guarantee it, council. Like people want big urban centers. They want to be, and they're realizing that they can conduct meetings over Zoom. There's going to be a real shift here in
And why are they
population.
doing it? Because our taxes are low.
Yeah.
That's part of it, but also because we are less dense and we take care of each other and we're a great community, and you can go for walks and you have a bit more freedom out here in the country. We're going to see that, I think, but I'm comfortable with 2.5%. Would somebody like to make a motion to reflect what are we thinking, guys?
I'll move that. I would move 2.5.
Councillor White? Councillor Westgate, you're going to second that?
Yes.
Any other questions or comments on that? Trevor?
I will come back for the next meeting in January. I will have a sheet that will have the changes and the impact of each change that has been discussed today, so that it'll be a full study rather than reprint every binder.
Oh,
Perfect.
yeah,
Right.
that's fine.
Yep.
idea.
Yep.
Okay,
And thank you very much.
Thanks, Trevor. Great report, Trevor. Thank you.
Yeah, very well done. Councillor Westgate, you have a comment?
You want money put in for the salt shed, we don't have to use it. If the report comes,
Maybe put some in reserves. We know we're
but then
gonna,
if we go ahead and do it, then the money is there. We don't have to change our budget.
So put in the million, whatever,
800,000.
1,000.
800,000 aged to 2022 summer or 2021 summer.
Hopefully we won't have to use.
Yeah. What is 800,000 in
Put in
2021?
half.
Hmm?
What if we put in half this year and half next year?
Is that a motion, Jerry?
I would
Oh.
put the 800,000 in this year. We're gonna have enough the year after.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would second that.
And this is only if we,
Need it.
if it
Well,
fails.
there'll be a report coming to us. We may change it and put that 800,000 towards whatever we're gonna do.
Yep.
Okay. I don't think that can be just staff direction, can it?
But something it's gonna have to be done.
Okay.
We'll take that as staff direction then, unless there's an objection. Councillor Morris?
One thing in the minor capital, Trevor, I didn't see was any reference to the new parking lot for downtown.
New parking lot will be after construction is completed.
So it'll be in the next year's budget?
It'll be in next year's,
Okay.
because we don't want to pave it while they're doing construction. It'll just
No,
be
no,
torn.
I was just thinking gravel, work up the gravel, let the construction workers park on it. So they're not on the street.
We've got ongoing conversations about that.
Okay,
But that's not really up to us anyway, is it?
No, he's talking about the one across the street.
Grove,
By-
Grove
by
Grove
the
is-
river.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Washington site, yeah.
okay, if you've got it under control, that's all I care.
I've looked at that. I think you're gonna have to dig it out and put it in if you're gonna pave it.
Oh, I
There's
think so
ground growing
too,
up through there, it's not just putting a few inches of A on it and paving it. It's digging out, putting B in and A in and making it right if we're gonna do it.
All right, council, we do have another meeting scheduled for 4:30, and we do have a delegation for that meeting, so we need to keep on track here. Anything else before we adjourn from this meeting? Okay, Amanda, do you want us to log out and log back in the new? I'm
Yes.
assuming.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks, Mayor. There's actually different credentials you'll find in your calendars for the.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, I found them.
We need
Thank
a
you,
motion.
folks.
Councillor
I'm a-
Morris, Councillor White, all in favor. Thanks, guys. We'll see you in about 5 minutes. I gotta take a bio break.